When I was a young Wib, a tiny Wiblet if you will, I loved the old Anderson Super Marionation shows. If you're not aware, they were a series of sci-fi shows created by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, where the entire thing was performed using marionettes and models, but they were made with such commitment and skill that you often forgot how ridiculous the whole thing was. Those shows were amazing. Thunderbird, Stingray, maybe not Joe 90 because, you know, just look at him, but the others were great. Honestly, I think watching all that model destruction as a kid is why I ended up loving kaiju movies so much as an adult. It's like there's an itch in me that can only be scratched by exploding miniatures.
Me? I never really watched them. I guess Captain Black from Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons was kinda cool?
Ah yes, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons. Of all of the Andersons' puppet-based shows, I'd say this was probably my favourite, or at the very least the one that stuck with me the most. It was a surprisingly dark series about an interplanetary war between mankind and a Martian race known as the Mysterons. And when I say surprisingly dark, I mean that most episodes began with the Mysterons killing someone in a very Final Destination-y way so they could create an evil duplicate. It ran for one season between 1967 and 1968 and is considered to be a pretty progressive show for its time, believe it or not. Also, Captain Scarlet's name is actually Paul, which we find funny for some reason.
And why is he telling you all of this? Well, that's because there was a Captain Scarlet game for the PlayStation 2, which we have right here. What the fuck was that? Captain Scarlet, the game, was released in 2006 and developed by Brain in a Jar and published by Blast Entertainment, the latter of which had a fairly well-deserved reputation of putting out complete shite on a regular basis. The Crappy Games Wikia even compared them to Phoenix Games, just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here.
But just because it was put out by the same company that published Little Britain the video game, doesn't automatically mean Captain Scarlet's going to be completely irredeemably bad, right? Anyway, Captain Scarlet is a driving game with a fair amount of vehicular combat thrown in. Makes sense since there were a lot of car chases in the show. The closest game I can think to compare it to is Reckless the Yakuza missions, but with more shooting and less of this.
Chubby Wubby, this is Hubby Dubby. Are you there?
Also, side note, more people should play Reckless the Yakuza missions. It's quite good. Well, I like it at least. It starts promisingly enough with the Captain Scarlet theme tune on the menu. Granted, it's a sterile MIDI version, but I still get a kick out of it even in this soulless synthesized state. Or no fun.
So let's address the obvious here. It looks like arse. Not the worst kind of arse, not like Atari Jaguar arse, but still arse. An incredibly bland kind of arse, which is possibly the worst kind of arse depending on your tolerance to bland arse. Arse. I mean, it's true that the graphical limitations of the PlayStation 2 means that you can't really hold games on the system to modern standards, but this just doesn't seem to be trying. Ridge Racer was more visually appealing, and that was a PS1 launch title. Outside of the models based on things from the show, everything looks basic and low detail. Like after they made the Captain Scarlet vehicles, they clocked off early and just let the Officer Jr. finish the art assets. In like, an afternoon.
Which might actually be true since the developer credits only list 4 people and a company that doesn't even list the game on their online portfolio, and they list their work on Barbie Horse Adventures Wild Horse Rescue, so shame isn't a concept you'd think they'd have.
Oh, and while we're talking about the audio-visual stuff here, take a listen to the soundtrack. See? There isn't one. The only music in the game is on the menu, so I hope you love these sounds.
The game is split into 16 missions where you thwart various plots of the Mysterons because you are the indestructible Captain Scarlet who knows the Mysterons game and things they plan. You do this by either driving really fast, shooting dudes, or preventing your dudes from being shot by their dudes, usually whilst driving really fast. The first mission is a time trial where you drive around for 3 minutes and then you win. You can't really lose no matter how much you screw up since the time limit is so incredibly generous. It's just you, the engine noise, and a boring winding course for the longest 3 minutes of your life. The only way you'll fail is if you fall asleep while playing. Which is, admittedly, fairly likely.
Mission 2 involves hunting down drones that roam around a Spectrum base. A base in Australia called Koala Base. Yes, well done 1960s, very funny, haha, fuck you! And here the boredom is replaced with frustration. You see, the base is fairly large and sprawling, with plenty of paths that can only be reached by coming at them from certain angles. But you have no way of knowing the layout since there's no map and your little radar only shows the enemies, not where the roads are. So you're gonna spend a lot of time getting lost here. It also takes like 10 shots to kill anything in this game, which is dumb and annoying and wastes my goddamn time and I hate it. Not that it matters, since there's no time limit on the missions, so even falling asleep won't save you with this one.
I guess we should talk about how the cars handle. Well, they handle like they're from a vaguely realistic racing game. You know, if you want to do a high-speed turn, you gotta brake early, follow the racing line, all that crap. It's not inherently bad, but it just doesn't really complement the way the rest of the game is designed. You spend a lot of time smashing into walls because you can't prepare properly for turns due to a lack of a mini-map which would have let you know how tight an upcoming turn would be. You just have to guess, and you're usually wrong.
It also means your turning speed can be incredibly sluggish, and since your guns only fire directly forward, if your target gets past you, it takes you half a century to turn yourself around and take aim again. All the while they're getting free shots at you since they have a full 360-degree arc of fire. Because fairness. Actually, we suspect the reason why the cars handle the way they do is because the devs just took the engine from one of their racing games, because that's literally all that they've made, and gave it a quick Captain Scarlet coat of paint without changing anything mechanically.
The next mission is an escort mission, and you're probably expecting us to hate it because, well, it's an escort mission, and escort missions are always the worst, and everyone with very good reason hates them. But do you want to know the funny thing? The sad, depressing funny thing?
The escort missions are probably the best missions in the game.
Not because they're fun, they're actually the most frustrating, but because they're the only missions that A, have challenge beyond merely a test of patience, and B, don't last a million fucking years. The escort missions are pretty short, fast affairs. If the controls were a bit more arcadey and if your enemies didn't take more shots to kill than the Bismarck, then they would probably actually be quite fun. But since none of that is the case, they're just kind of annoying.
Not to mention that the thing you're protecting,
a maximum security vehicle, or MSV,
does not give a single shit. It doesn't care what you're doing, drives like a maniac, and refuses to get out of the way for anything. Even you. Its armour is also seemingly made out of fuzzy felt, so there's no taking escort missions carefully. Gotta go fast, and that means mistakes happen. Again, and again, and again. You know, unless you're Drummer Matt, who did them on his first try because he's a fucking wizard or something. I guess the point is, although they're shitty levels, the escort missions are the only ones that feel like a proper video game. Unlike the rest of the levels, which are just Captain Paul's waste your fucking time adventure. The rest of the 16 missions are all pretty much just variants on what we've already seen.
Drive 1,000,000 miles down a featureless road and kill one enemy.
Drive 1,000,000 miles but kill everyone along the way.
Drive all the way back, but you don't have to kill everyone, I guess.
Realize that everything and everyone you've ever loved will one day just be dust.
More escort missions.
They're all insultingly easy, and despite screwing up a bunch, we never actually died once in our entire playthrough. Hell, it took a depressingly long amount of time to realize that the giant logo on the left was actually a health bar. Only the escort missions cause restarts, and that's just because the companion died. Every other mission was done first try. That's not bragging, they're just that easy. The only really noteworthy levels are a couple that are in this huge tunnel that has a section in it that is so dark we thought our PS2 AV cable was dying. And a couple of missions that take place on Mars, which despite being a wonderful opportunity to play with the game's physics, since gravity is weaker on Mars, just play exactly the same as the Earth levels. You don't even have a special vehicle. We wouldn't have even known it was Mars if we hadn't read the mission text. We would have just assumed we were back in Oz.
Actually, interesting question. In the show, Mars was depicted as a grey rocky landscape, but in the game it's closer to its real-life appearance. But was that because they wanted to correct the inaccuracy in the show, or were they just lazy bastards who didn't watch enough of the show to realise that Mars in the original Captain Scarlet was grey? You decide.
Also, sometimes the cars are ghost cars, but I don't think that's intentional. You've also probably noticed that there's a second vehicle in some of those clips, as well as the
Spectrum Patrol Car.
There's the
Spectrum Pursuit Vehicle.
They both handle pretty much the same, although the
Spectrum Pursuit Vehicle
is a bit faster and has missiles instead of machine guns. Sadly, you don't get to pick which one you use, each mission picks for you because letting you select it might give you some investment in the mission's outcome, and that wasn't deemed important. Actually, for some reason they chose to brag about the fact there's only 2 playable vehicles on the back of the box, which is kind of weird because that's kind of like the exact opposite of a feature.
Oh, I suppose there's also the story. We haven't really mentioned it because it's barely there. It's entirely conveyed through text boxes before and after each mission, but there's no real overarching narrative. It's just a series of occasionally connected missions, sometimes vaguely based on stuff from the show.
Even the whole "are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president" stuff from the back of the box really only describes the last mission, but if you didn't read the mission briefing, you wouldn't know it was any different from the other escort missions. Hell, it's literally a reversed version of a previous mission anyway. And your only reward for beating it is another text box saying "you saved the world, grats, game over, fuck you." Your only option then is to start the game all over again. No new modes, no level select, you start the game from the beginning or not at all.
We'd recommend not at all. In a previous review, we described whatever the hell Dinosaurs was as having no redeeming qualities, and it doesn't. Seriously, fuck Dinosaurs, it's the worst. But Captain Scarlet barely has any qualities at all, redeeming or otherwise. It's boring and frustrating to play, but it's also incredibly easy for the most part, so it kinda cancels out and just makes it nothing.
And that's it. It's a nothing game. Nothing happens, you achieve nothing, you learn nothing, you feel nothing. If you buy this, you're not buying a game to put on your shelf, you're buying a slice of dry toast. It could have been great if somebody had put more effort in, but as it is right now, it's utterly, utterly worthless.
The only good things about the game are the things it took from the show, like the theme tune and the vehicle designs, but realistically they're just good points about the show, so they don't really count. I guess considering how pointless playing the game is, then the fact that it's only an hour and a half long could also be considered a plus, provided you didn't pay too much money for it anyway. I mean, it's not even based on the most sensible version of Captain Scarlet. There was a CGI reboot released a year before this game came out, and just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that it wouldn't make a more sensible show to have a tie-in for. We can only assume that they couldn't get the rights to that version of the show anywhere near as cheaply, like the rights holders actually still gave a little bit of a shit about what their name was slapped on.
And yeah, we know this is basically shovelware and it was never meant to be a AAA release or anything, but it's just shit. I hate it. Why does this keep happening? Well, here we are, at the end of yet another video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been worth it, because I have literally had the fucking Captain Scarlet theme tune stuck in my head for about a week, which is... It might sound fun, you might get a chuckle out of it, but no, it's literally ruined my life. My brain is ruined. I need to get a new one. Speaking of getting a new one, thank you very much to our patrons. Because of you guys, we were actually able to buy decent lighting, so you can see our pasty, unhealthy faces in full glorious HD, which I'm sure some of you never wanted, but I'm sorry. If you like the video, please consider doing us a like and a subscribe if you fancy it. If not, whatever. I'm not the boss of you. You do what you like. We're sorry.
Crazy Taxi, no one cares what
it's because of the heat from the toast.